A respected military officer leading a double life, concealing sinister secrets that would shock the nation. A colonel in the Canadian Forces, highly regarded and holding a position of authority. Little do those around him know that his facade hides a dark and twisted reality. Welcome back. I'm Richard, and this is True Crime Desk. Today, we're going to be delving into the fascinating case of Colonel Russell Williams. Now, I think this case is going to have us all questioning the people we consider pillars of the community. I think it's important that we realize that people are only going to show us what they want us to see. And we really never know anybody. So, with all that being said, let's get into the case. Just a quick note, I'm going to be replacing some words or abbreviating some because this is YouTube and they don't allow us to say certain words. I think you guys understand. I think you know what I'm talking about. So let's move on. Now, first I'm going to be going over his early life, his education, military background, all that kind of stuff. But I don't want to spend too long on it because after pages and pages of schooling and degrees, it all becomes a little bit too much. And I don't want to be putting this guy at a pedestal or for it to seem like that. So I'll go over some of it, but it won't be too exhausting. David Russell Williams was born in Broom Grove, Worcestershire, England, on March 7th, 1963, to Christine Norrie and Cedric Davis Williams. His family immigrated to Canada, settling in Cork River, Ontario. Williams' father was hired as a metallurgist at Cork River Laboratories, a Canadian nuclear research laboratory. After this location, the Williams family met another family, the Sovaks, and they became good friends. All right, I know I'm going to butcher some of these names, and I'm doing the best I can, so bear with me. Russell's parents divorced when he was 6 years old, and his mother later married Dr. Jerry Sovak, and that is actually the husband of her friend. So the couple that they were friends with, that's her ex-husband. So that's kind of a little weird. During this time, Williams took his stepfather's name and they moved again to Scorbath, Ontario, a borough of Toronto. Now, if I butchered that, I apologize. While living in the Scarborough Bluff area, Williams began his high school at Birtmouth College, but finished at Upper Canadian College, which is called UCC. He delivered the Globe and Mail newspaper and learned to play the piano. By 1979, his family moved to South Korea, where Sovak was overseeing another research project. Williams completed his first 2 years of high school as a boarding student at UCC while his parents were in South Korea. In his final year in 1982, Williams studied economics and political science at the University of Toronto, Scarborough, UTSC, where another notorious Canadian murderer, Paul Bernardo, was coincidentally 2 academic years ahead of him. Now, Williams graduated from UTSC with a Bachelor of Arts in 1986. He then embarked on pranks with his friends and roommates. There was a story that I heard that he actually would go into his roommate's room and hide in their closet for hours. And I'm not kidding, I mean hours. And then when they came in, he'd scare them. Now, if that wasn't a sign of he was a little bit creepy, I don't know what is. Williams joined the Canadian Forces in 1987, receiving his flying wings in 1990. He was promoted to the 3 Canadian Forces flying training schools based at CFB, where he served 2 years as an instructor. Promoted to captain on January 1st, 1991, Williams was posted to the 434 Combat Support Squadron at CFB Sherwood in 1992, where he flew the CC-144 Challenger in the Electric Warfare and Coastal Patrol role. In 1994, he was posted to 412 Transport Squadron in Ottawa, where he transported VIPs, including high-ranking government officials and foreign dignitaries. Williams was then promoted to major in November 1999 and was posted to Director of General Military Career in Ottawa, where he served as a multi-engine pilot career manager. On July 15, 2009, Williams was sworn in as Wing Commander at CFB Trenton. by the outgoing wing commander, Brigadier General Michael Hood. CFB Trenton is Canadian's busiest military airbase and a hub of support for overseas military operations, located in Trenton, Ontario. The base also functions as a point of arrival for the bodies of all the Canadian Forces personnel killed in Afghanistan, and the starting point for the funeral procession along the Highway of Heroes, where the bodies were brought to Toronto for autopsy. Williams was regarded as a model military officer through his 23-year career. He had flown Queen Elizabeth II and the Duke of Edinburgh and the Governor General of Canada and the Prime Minister of Canada. So he's flown some really, really important people. I'd really like to be in the room when they found out this guy's a scumbag and realized that he was flying them around. They were putting their lives in his hands. What a scary thought that is. On June 1st, 1991, Williams married Mary Elizabeth Harriman, who is an associate director of the Heart and Stroke Foundation. The couple moved to Orland, a suburb of Ottawa, in July 2006. All right, now it's time to get into why we're really here. Now that we've gone over all his achievements and everything, which mean nothing to me as far as I'm concerned. I mean, after what he's done, it doesn't really matter. But it's all necessary. We all have to go. It's part of the story, so we need to be thorough. So let's get into what this scumbag did. It all began with seemingly unrelated incidents. Reports began to surface of unusual break-ins. Authorities started connecting the dots as reports of very unusual behavior and unsettling occurrences started to accumulate. The initial thought they were just isolated incidents, just basic break-ins, but then they started looking into it more, and it took more of a sinister turn. During the burglaries, Williams would take photographs of the female undergarments, spread them out on the bed, and take photos of himself wearing panties and bras. Now, there is images of this, and I thought about putting it up, but after looking at it, you don't need to see that. Corporal Marie France Como was born on March 19th, 1972 in Bristol, Northumberland County, Ontario, Canada. She died on November 25th, 2009. She was 37 years old. Jessica Elizabeth Lloyd was born on May 18th, 1982 in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. And she died on January 8th, 2010. She was only 27 years old. Okay, before we go any further, just a heads up, I'm no longer going to call him Colonel. I'm either going to call him Williams or Russell Williams because he doesn't deserve the respect and the honor of Colonel. So going further, it's either going to be just Russell or Williams. Okay, now we're going to go over what happened to Marie France Como. So, like I say in all my videos, fair warning. Corporal Marie France Como, who I'm going to call Marie from now on, came from a military family. Her father was a Canadian Armed Force medic, and her grandfather had been a Spitfire pilot who earned honors in World War II. She followed eagerly in their footsteps, proudly serving on the crew of Prime Minister Stephen Harper's flight to Munich in November of 2009. Marie spent 12 years in the military, reaching the rank of corporal before her death in November. Because she grew up in a military family, they moved frequently. Now, Russell acknowledged that he once met Marie on a military flight. Being a commander on the base, he had access to all information, personal schedules, and all that kind of stuff. So it made it really easy for him to find out where she lived. Now, Williams parked about 600 or 700 meters away from her home in a wooded area. He then walked through the wooded area and broke through a window in her basement and waited for her to come home from her trip. While in her house, he verified that she lived alone, so he hung out there for about an hour, and then he decided to steal about 18 items of her undergarments and put an S-toy in one of her pair of underwear. When she returned home from her trip, she noticed someone had been in her house and been through her things, so she automatically blamed her boyfriend, and he denied it. Between 10:30 and 11 p.m. in November of 2009, on what would ultimately be Marie's last night, Williams arrived in Brighton. He had turned his BlackBerry off the night before. He could hear her speaking on her phone in her bedroom. He took a kit with him, entering through the basement window once again. He concealed himself in the basement for about 30 to 40 minutes, waiting for her to go to bed. Instead, she decided to go search for her cat. When she came down to the basement, she could see that her cat was staring at something in the corner. So when she looked to see what her cat was staring at, she could see this dark figure. She couldn't tell who it was because his face was covered. So he proceeded to hit her over the head a couple times with a red flashlight, leaving a tie and some blood in that area. While she was trying to run away, she stumbled over a duffel bag, and that's where he subdued her. Images presented in court showed bloodstains on the floor. The pattern is consistent with blood-soaked hair. Footprints were also seen in blood. Marie's injured wrists were from restraints he had put on her. He had basically tied her hands with clothing to a jack post in her basement. The metal pin protruding from the jack post left a mark on Marie. Williams took 2 still photos showing her bound to the post at 12:29 a.m. On November 25th, with only a shawl covering her, Williams took a sheet to cover a closed blind using a knife from the kitchen to hold it up. He then went around the room, taking all the light bulbs out so you couldn't see anything. And then after he did that, he felt comfortable and safe. He went back down to the basement where she was tied to the post. And there's a bunch of blood evidence down there, that post. And there's also a hole in one of the drywall down there, so it obviously was a struggle down there. While bringing her up from the basement, she fell unconscious. After he got her upstairs, he untied her hands, took the duct tape off her mouth, and then took 4 photos of her naked body. Williams also took photos and videos of himself with her. And over the next 2 hours, he assaulted her over and over again. So this guy is a sick piece of crap, that's for sure. At one point, Marie pleaded with Williams to leave and to undo her hands because it's tight and she won't go anywhere. During this, Williams checked the front window to see if anyone was coming. At that point, Marie fled to the bathroom. Williams chased her and struck her repeatedly. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this already, but he recorded a lot of this, and Marie at one point can be heard in a muffled voice screaming, "I don't want to die, I don't want to die." As he tried to suffocate her, she got up and ran away. Even though she was tied and bound with duct tape, she still fought him off because she's a tough girl. Unfortunately, she couldn't get away, and during the next 4 hours, he assaulted her over and over again and told her to remain quiet, and if she did, he would let her breathe. And at one point, she replied, "You're going to K me, aren't you?" She can be heard on the tape over and over again pleading for her life, saying, "I don't want to die, I don't want to die, I don't deserve to die." And she also at one point started to plead with him, begging him to let her go, saying she wouldn't tell anybody. But at some point, he decided to put duct tape over her mouth and nose and suffocate her. As he was doing that, she was saying, "Please have a heart." Now, after he did that despicable deed, he went around the house, he washed the sheets, picked up everything he could, trying to get all the evidence he could find. And police would later find photos on his computer that he took of her at 3:30 a.m., which was the time of her death. And if that isn't bad enough, he also took more pictures of her about 30 minutes later. And believe it or not, he took pictures of himself washing the sheets with bleach. He later took her body, put it on her bed, and covered it with a duvet. He took her undergarments and left through the patio door at the back of her Brighton home. He left the door unlocked when he left. Williams did not return to CFB Trenton, which stands for Canadian Forces Base, after the murders, but he drove directly to Ottawa, where he had a meeting to attend. Along the way, he discarded the shoes and the rope they had used. Marie's boyfriend discovered her body later that day when he went to her house because she didn't show up for dinner they had planned. So when he went over her house, the front door was locked, so he went around to the back. The back door was unlocked, and he went in and he found her body in her bed. Now, Williams later said he K'd her because he thought she was going to tell the authorities, and because she was in the military and he was in the military, that they would put the 2 and 2 together. So that was the reason he K'd her. Now, in my opinion, he K'd her just because he's a dirtbag, and that's what they do. And every time they do this stuff, they try to make an excuse like it's not their fault. Like, she was going to tell. What do you think she was going to do? You think she was just going to say, "No, my bad, no problem"? I mean, it's pathetic. I mean, this guy's pathetic. Now let's move on to Jessica. Now, Jessica Elizabeth Lloyd, who I'm just going to call Jessica from now on, was also part of a military family. Her father was a 25-year veteran of the Canadian Navy. The family lived at CFB Uplands, a now defunct base outside of Ottawa, until Jessica was 8 years old in 1990. Now, unfortunately, Jessica's father died when she was relatively young. Her brother was 15 and she was 13. So losing their father at a young age is never easy. I've been fortunate that my father is actually still alive in his 90s, but I know people that have lost their parents at a young age, and it's definitely not easy. Now, Williams and Jessica were not acquainted before the crime. He claims that he saw her jogging on her treadmill as he drove by on around January 27, 2010, but the Crown later disputed that, saying that that wasn't possible, They don't believe he saw her that way. So we really don't know how he first became acquainted with him or where he saw her, but he definitely knew she was there, and he knew she lived alone. While Jessica was visiting a friend, Williams broke into her house. Jessica had texted a friend during the evening of January 28th, the last anyone had heard from her. That night, Williams parked in a field, watching the back of her house for some time. Williams told police he entered her bedroom while she was asleep. She woke up before he struck her. Now, to subdue her, he tied her on her stomach and put duct tape over her eyes. He took photos of her standing in the hallway wearing what she had wore when he came into the house, which was a black tank top and gray jogging pants. He then grabbed some lamps, brought them into the bedroom so he had more light, and then he proceeded over about 2 a.m. to assault her over and over again. Now, Jessica did everything to cooperate. Even when she did something wrong, she thought she did something wrong, she apologized, and she thought if she cooperated that he would let her go. Now, I know if you're ever in this situation, you might think the thing to do is just to cooperate, and then they're going to let you go. But to be honest with you, in most cases, it doesn't make a difference. When they're there, if they decide they're going to kill you or that they want to kill you, nothing you do is going to change any of that. Now, I understand that, if you're in that situation, you have to make that call for yourself. And I'm not judging Jessica by any means. She made the call that she thought she needed to make. She made a decision at the time, and it's not for me to question it. I'm just saying most of the time, it usually doesn't make a difference, but each person has to decide what they need to do at the time. After 3 hours, Williams took Jessica to his truck and then to his Tweed home. Witnesses who saw Williams' vehicle near her home told police it was weird to see a vehicle in that location. Police later discovered large footwear impressions outside of her home, along with a smaller footwear impression. On the drive over to Tweed, Jessica was sitting in the front seat of his truck blindfolded, and they arrived at his house between 4:30 and 5 a.m. When they arrived at the house, he made her take a shower, and then he jumped in the shower with her, and then he let her sleep for a couple hours. What a nice guy. Now, at some point, Jessica had a seizure caused by the stress, and Williams told her, quote, "Don't make it worse for yourself. Talk to me, Jessica. Talk to me." And she told him that she needed to go to the hospital or she was going to die. And he kept telling her to stay calm or she was going to bite off her tongue. Because he cares about her well-being, right? She continued to beg him to remove the ropes and take her to the hospital. One of the last things Jessica said is, "If I die, make sure you tell my mother that I love her." Williams decided to give her some fruit and assault her again. After he did that, he dressed her and walked her to the front door of his house like they were going to leave, told her he was going to take her back home. And as they were leaving, he hit her on top of the head with a flashlight, caving in her head. Real class guy. He later claimed to the police that he just thought she was unconscious, so he decided to grab a rope and strangle her, and then took more photographs of her. On Tuesday, January 29th, he drove Jessica's body to the place where her body was later found. All right, now that we've gone over both of them, and I know that was a lot, we got to start talking about how they traced this guy down and figure out who it was. Now, I'm here to tell you that the law enforcement in this case was superb, especially the interrogation by Jim Smith. There's no doubt in my mind that law enforcement agencies all over the world are using this interrogation as a training tool because it's superb. And if you haven't seen it before, you definitely need to check it out. It's a little long, but it's definitely worth it. Now, Jessica was reported missing when she didn't show up for work and her car was at the house. Police started thinking about Marie-France Cuomo's case and thinking that the two must be connected, so they started a search immediately. It included personnel and research and rescue airships from CFB Trenton, authorized by Williams. Despite the efforts of police and hundreds of volunteers, after a week, no trace of Lloyd had been found. However, witnesses reported seeing a silver-colored SUV parked in a field near Jessica's house on the night of her disappearance. Police found tire treads whose distinct tread narrowed the range of potential suspect vehicles to a few, including a Nissan Pathfinder. On the evening of February 4th, Williams stopped at the OPP checkpoint on Highway 37. While appearing to be looking for drunk drivers, they were basically out there to look and see if they could find tire treads that matched the ones in the field, while asking people if they had seen Jessica. While they were talking to Williams, he seemed nervous and he seemed like he was in a hurry, telling the officers that he had to hurry home because he had a sick child there. During the brief roadside interrogation, officers saw that the tread on Williams' tires matched those found in the field. From that moment on, Williams was under police surveillance. On the afternoon of February 7th, Williams went to the Ottawa Police Headquarters at the request of OPP Detective Sergeant Jim Smith, who had told him he had a few loose ends to tie up. Once Williams was in the interrogation room, Smith confronted him with questions for which he had no satisfactory answers. Meanwhile, Williams was wearing the boots he had worn the night of Jessica's disappearance, which were a match to the footprints found in the snow outside her house. While the interrogation was in progress, officers with warrants were going through his Cotton home in Tweed and also his home in Ottawa in the presence of his shocked wife. Now, periodically, Detective Smith would leave the interrogation room to get updates from the officers in the field, and every time he came back, there was more evidence against him. So eventually, Williams finally gave up. Now, if you ask me, Detective Smith played him like a fiddle. This guy's supposed to be this big and high and mighty guy in the military base, but against Detective Smith, he had no chance. So Smith asked him, "All right, so where's Lloyd?" And Williams replied, "You got a map?" Jessica's brother, Andy, said, quote, "Every year, obviously, we have birthdays, and the anniversary of her death just came up. Thanksgiving was just a couple weeks ago. And it was just me and my mom. Unfortunately, that's the way it's been, and that's the way it will be. Jessica and I were more than siblings. We were friends. And I was looking forward to being an uncle to her children, and also as much as being a father." End quote. Jessica's mother, Roseanne, said, quote, "Williams snatched my only daughter from me. She said I could never hug her again and never tell her that I love her." End quote. Now, the search of Williams' property turned up a camera, a duffel bag containing a black skull cap, a manual for a lockpick and boxes, and pillowcases stuffed with underwear and lingerie. Hidden in the basement cellar of the Ottawa home were 2 computer hard drives. They also found records of Williams' activity as an S-Predator over a 2-year period, video clips and nearly 3,000 photographs, including depictions of the Tweed assaults of the M's of Marie and Jessica. Now, there were also detailed descriptions of all the break-ins and all the stolen property he had meticulously inventoried. Now, the news of Williams' arrest and bizarre double life had stunned all the people in the community, obviously. On February 8th, Williams was charged with S assault and forcible confinement. He would later be charged with numerous counts of breaking and entering. Because Williams pled guilty to all charges, he was not put on trial. During the Easter weekend of April 2010, guards prevented Williams from choking to death on a cardboard toilet paper tube. He was later put on 24-hour watch. On October 22nd, 2010, Williams was sentenced to 2 terms of life imprisonment with no possibility of parole for 25 years. He was also registered as an S offender. His Nissan Pathfinder and his hoard of stolen garments were destroyed. Williams was stripped of all rank and dismissed from the Canadian Forces. His uniform was burned, and his decorations were destroyed. All right, this is the part of the video where I tell you what I think and tell you if I think he's guilty or not. And I think it's pretty easy. In this one, he's definitely guilty. There's plenty of evidence against him. He's a true scumbag, and I think he's where he needs to be. And I really feel bad for the family of Jessica and Marie, because those 2 really had something going for them. Marie was in the military, serving her country, and doing some real good things. And Jessica was just a baby. She's in her 20s. She had her whole life ahead of her. And he just thought he can do what he wants and take their life away. It's disgusting. So he's definitely guilty. He's definitely where he belongs. Now, a further note is that I'm an American and all, and our crimes, our punishments are tough. I don't believe in that parole, that they're always, no matter what they do in these other countries, they always get this possibility of parole. Now, I get it's a possibility of parole. It doesn't mean he's going to get out. He's not going to get out. But I think it's just ridiculous that they even have that. But that's just my opinion. And so I thought I'd give it. So that's the way I look at it. He's definitely guilty, and he's definitely a scumbag. All right, so if you guys watched the video last week, I made a promise that there was a very unique thing in this one that has something to do with the prior case. And the prior case was Dr. Jeff McDonald. And I had told you about a miniseries called Fatal Vision, which starred Gary Cole. Well, the connection is that there's also another miniseries called An Officer and a Murderer, and it stars Gary Cole. So Gary Cole is the lead actor in both of the miniseries. There's one on Dr. Jeff McDonald and the one on Russell here. So I just thought that was really odd, very unique. And some of you, if you don't know who Gary Cole is, he actually played the father in the remake of The Brady Bunch. So that's Gary Cole for you younger kids out there. But that was the connection that I was talking about. I think it's very unique, I guess. Kind of odd. He played the starring role in both of them. All right. So with all that being said and all that stuff out of the way, this was a long case. It was a lot to do, a lot for me because I'm new to this, and this getting all these facts and reading this stuff can be tough for me. So I appreciate you guys watching. If you haven't subscribed, please do. And I want you to talk in the comments now. Let me know what you think. I want to know, do you think he's guilty? You think he's innocent? Let's discuss it in the comments. I'm definitely interested in what you have to think. So that's going to do it. So thanks for watching. So until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and remember to always mind your surroundings. Bye.